Most of the women I work with do not struggle because they lack discipline, intelligence, capability. No, they struggle because they have been conditioned and trained to find their limit by crashing into it. My name is Monique R. I am back with another video. I want to talk about this topic of capacity because I just had one of the most insightful conversations with one of my longstanding clients about capacity and the value that she has found in working with me. And I feel like it's just been this kind of mystical way of being, this way that I naturally operate, where I just understand capacity within my life. I respect my capacity. I also believe wholeheartedly, and I have seen the evidence, the proof of this, that I can operate within my capacity and that I can still be extremely successful, that I can attract money, that I can attract work, that I can create and build whatever it is that I want to build, and that I don't have to put my body on the line. I don't have to sacrifice my well-being and my mental state in order to do so. So this client asked me at the end of the call, she's like, Monique, you talk a lot about capacity, and in the work that we've done in the past, I've actually been able to increase a great deal of the capacity that I was maybe pouring into some of the wrong areas of my life, or at least just like not the highest priorities, the things that were not really a part of my future. And she said, I find myself being really curious about how you do that. I was like, how do I do what? And she was like, well, first of all, how you know what your capacity is. And then second of all, like how you respond to it. Like, why do you actually respect your capacity? In effect, she was saying one of the things that she really struggles with is she's like, I think if I knew what my capacity was, I don't think I would listen to it. I think I would just move past it. And when I'm working and I have so many things to do and I'm tacking on more and saying yes to more and wanting to just do so many things, I always feel like I have more capacity because basically I haven't, and I said crashed and burned. She was like, yeah, like if I haven't burnt out, that means I have more capacity. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. She's like, what I'm hearing from you is that maybe I've hit my capacity before burning out, and that's what I need to be able to identify and respond to. And so I did some personal research on this because I always really work well with analogies or metaphors. And I was like, the first thing I think of with capacity is like physical capacity, right? Our physical capacity to work, to effort. And it took me back to working with my personal trainer. I've been working with personal trainers, especially once I decided I was going to have children and I wanted my body to be in really great shape before giving birth to my first child. That's when I hired my first physical trainer. And I've had maybe 3 or 4 different, maybe 4 or 5 now, actually, different trainers since then. My daughter is 8.5 years old. So in that time period, working with multiple people, men and women, but mostly women, who have helped me understand different things about my body and strength training, how to actually build strength in my body. And so one of the things that I've noticed with every one of these trainers is that we switch up the program of what we're doing. Not just like, okay, we're doing upper body today, upper body on Tuesday, lower body on Wednesday, and we'll be doing like more like plyometrics or mobility stuff on Saturday. I was doing 2 to 3 days a week training, 2 days with the trainer, then one day just myself. I would go to the gym or work out at home. And the other layer on top of like muscle groups was how hard I was going. And so sometimes this was framed as, okay, weight, we can add more weight. You have shown that you have more strength to carry more weight. But other times it was in not just like reps or sets, but whether or not we were going to go to failure. So if you're familiar with weightlifting at all, you understand that sometimes when you're lifting, when you're doing sets, you're not just going to count like, okay, we're just going to count 1, lift, 2, lift, 3, lift, that you're just going to lift until failure, until literally your muscles stop, like you can't move anymore. It won't go, the movement won't happen. So you're lifting it till failure. And I never fully understood what the purpose of lifting to failure was. I thought it was really kind of to test my limits. And I think that was part of what they were looking for, was like a way to gauge, okay, let me actually watch how strong she's gotten as a tool for me as a trainer. I need to be able to visibly see where she can no longer push, where her body actually says no. It's not just her mind, but I can actually see the shaking in her body. I can see the sweat dripping down her brow. I can see that her body has responded and said, this is where our limit is right now, right? And so I looked it up. I looked it up prior to hitting record today because I was like, I want to understand like what is the point of lifting to failure and why we would do it intermittently. It was like actually fairly rare with the trainers that I worked with to do it because I wasn't like training for like bodybuilding competitions or for a very specific sport or anything like that. I have wanted to feel strong in my body and to work on muscle groups that have maybe not been as strong as I'd like them to be. And also, to get snatched, to be cute and strong. I want these muscles popping. And so, yeah, I never really got the logic behind it. And so I was like, there must be a science to this. And so I looked it up, and I don't want to misquote the person. This is an article that was posted by AP News, and there were some interviews in here. One of the interviews was conducted by the chair of exercise science and health promotion at Florida Atlantic University. So this person has authored a bunch of papers. It says has co-authored a review of 55 research papers on the subject of sports medicine and journals and stuff like that. So reputable source, I think published researcher, author, scholar person who literally studies this. He says that if somebody wants to increase muscle mass as much as they possibly can, then training to failure is something to consider. And I thought that was interesting because it was like, well, if you just want to increase your muscle mass rapidly, you just want to see big muscles grow, this is part of how you do it. You can train to failure. But he said that lifting weights until failure, while they may build bigger muscles, it's not necessary to increase strength. So you can lift to failure in order to see a visual shift, right? It's like cosmetically, things will change. Visually, things will change, right? But the strength beneath, the infrastructure beneath, it's no different than if you were just to do sets consistently, graduating over time as you build more strength. But that consistency was a lot more important if you actually care about strength, because going to failure does not actually build any more strength or capacity in you, right? Which I thought was so interesting. I was like, oh, there's some kind of analogy here, right? It says there's a difference between, this is the article again, between training for health and training for elite performance benefits. It says for the average person simply looking to increase their fitness levels, it's much easier to get results from an intense workout session that comes with 5 to 10 reps rather than training to complete exhaustion. And he said failure training often comes at a cost. Since people are working to that standard, they might be so tired and sore that they end up skipping workouts, right? Okay, so I know if you're my girl, you're tuned into my message, you do care about accomplishing things, you do care about, pushing yourself past limitations that the world tries to put on you, limitations that maybe your fear tries to place in your way, that you do want to expand. You want to see, what can I do? How far can I take things? I have big ideas. I have interesting thoughts. I'm super creative, like all of those things. So you kind of want to test limits. And so I think of lifting to failure as thinking of like capacity sprints. So I think me showing up on YouTube right now, I'm recording 5 days a week on top of running my existing core business, which includes one-on-one clients that I keep a roster of, a group coaching program that I am leading and running, supporting a group of women, a retreat that I am planning and hosting and will be executing soon, all of the other sort of marketing efforts, and then obviously the basic operations of my business. I've got invoices to send, I've got things to track, I've got a project management system to update, I've got goals to set, I've got, paperwork, I've got taxes to pay. I'm running a business. So my capacity right now is stretched a little bit more than it is on like in any given week. On like, I consider them to be, in the startup I used to work at, we used to call them high tide and low tide seasons. And we would flow in and out of high tide and low tide protocols in terms of, what work needed to be done, what our response rate time was for certain things. So if we were at high tide with the resources that we have, with the people on the team that we had, it was like, okay, we're at high tide, which means we're doing a lot of direct client service. It's just a lot of work to put out. We have to deprioritize some of the other things because we're in high tide protocol. So there has to be this trade-off so that we can deliver quality on our top priorities in high tide moments. And then when the tide, ultimately, eventually, it goes back down, then we can go into our low tide protocol. We can get back to some of the back burner things or the things that were not the most urgent or the most important at the time. And just trusting that we have something in place to accommodate both high and low tides. Neither one of them will ever last forever. And that a beautiful place to be is something that's more like a medium tide, right? Where you've kind of got a nice flow of like some of the high priority things for the business, revenue generating things, that sort of thing, and client service things can all happen at the same time, as well as the back end, the back office stuff that does still matter to sustain the work. And so, yeah, me doing this YouTube sprint of recording 5 days a week is a little bit of a high tide moment. And so I adjust accordingly. There are things that I have just deprioritized. For instance, Instagram. I'm hardly posting over there right now, and I could beat myself up over it, or I could stay up super late and just throw stuff out there. But I have learned my lesson in the past that I also don't give my best, and I don't get the payout that I want. I've actually learned a couple of lessons, but the first one is that if you go ahead and spread yourself across all of these things, you're not going to get the payout that you're hoping for. Because you're not able to, you can't give your best to everything at all at once. It's impossible. I don't care what anybody says. Things have to be sequenced, things have to be paced. And it might be that, for instance, I could give the best I have. I could be killing it on YouTube. I could just be like, I'm just in a social media phase. I'm just in a front-facing content creation mode, and I'm just giving my all, and I'm unwilling to set down Instagram because I have not given it any strategic thought as to like why it actually is not a consistent and high priority in this season. And I could say, you know what, I'm going to stay up late, either after creating and editing and posting these videos and dealing with any troubleshooting and all that. I'm going to do the same thing and make sure that I'm getting all of my content, flowing on Instagram. But it's going to cost me somewhere else in life, right? And I think that points beautifully back to the article where it was like, well, yeah, you could go hard and push to failure and get the beach muscles and whatever, but you're not actually building strength in the foundation, the thing that really matters, the stuff that's going to actually sustain you. What sustains me? My family, my marriage, my health, me being able to take a coffee or tea break, me being able to take a walk, me going to bed at a decent hour, and me being able to, wake up with some sense of freedom. It also impacts my ability to show up with like full creativity, on the platform of choice or of my priority in this particular season, to be feeding into that stabilizing factor, that foundational factor in my life. And so I am simply unwilling to destabilize myself, to destabilize the things that feel fundamental and foundational to me pretty much at any point in time. Again, there are moments where it's just like, okay, for this month, again, I'm doing 30 videos. It's like 6 weeks long, 5 days a week. I need a little bit of extra help, but it's also lined up beautifully. And I've gotten help from grandparents right now because my parents are still in town. So my dad is helping with pickup for the kids. My mom is doing some of the additional cooking and things like that, while my husband and I are both focused on different things we've got going on for work. So I know that we have the additional capacity in the house, so that I know my kids don't have to suffer because I'm running around, barely having any attention, or showing up late picking them up from whatever because I'm trying to eke out one more video, or they don't have nothing to eat forever, Like there's just some backstops in place that kind of help me gauge capacity. And yeah, I think the thing I said a moment ago around my client's question of like even knowing what my capacity is and kind of holding a standard around that, I don't like how it feels to be destabilized. I don't like how it feels, not for, like truly destabilized in any longer term. And for me, longer term is like, okay, like a month or two. That's enough, That's enough. We don't need to overdo it here. I'm getting a little hot under these lights, y'all. But so that's kind of how I know. And then number two, like me actually responding to it, is because I know what it yields when I focus on the main thing, when I keep the main thing, if it's just like, if I say, okay, I'm prioritizing this test, this is like a high tide project, it's going to require a little bit more of me. I still do need to keep some of the basic functions going. What is critical? Everything else has to be like, okay, sort it through a filter of like, what is actually critical for these 6 weeks? What else is critical that has to get done? Okay, well, I do have to send invoices out. I do want to make sure that my client delivery for my existing clients is on point. I do need to make sure that any sort of like sales conversations or things like that that I have lined up, that I am ready and excited and clear-minded and able to do those, because those are revenue generating. I am running a business, I want to be able to make sure that I am putting my best foot forward there. But one of the things I do know about in my particular business, what I know about Instagram is it is not a direct revenue generator. It is a way that I sort of maintain connection with my existing network community, past clients, friends, family, and them just knowing what I'm up to. And it kind of creates passively opportunities for me to do more direct marketing efforts. And so if I deprioritize that for 6 weeks, it's fine. It's something that it has been a helpful place in my business, but it's also okay. I'm also really clear around the fact that like I might be making like a more fulsome strategic pivot to YouTube, but I need to run this test in order to get the data I need to help me make that decision. So there's also like a sequencing thing here, right? The other thing I was sharing with my client is that what I have seen over and over again with my clients, with women in my life, in my circle, or just, out in the world, and atmosphere stories that I hear, also in my own life, is that when we do push past that limit, right? It's kind of like, all right, here's my actual capacity line, but I'm gonna run past it because I can. I haven't fallen out yet. I haven't actually hit a wall. I am not crashing and burning. That means I have more capacity. I'm choosing to run past that wall. Maybe this wall is so flimsy I barely even feel it or see it anymore because I've been ignoring it for so long. I run through it. I hit this wall. In that span, that distance that you cover beyond your capacity before you hit that wall, oftentimes whatever gains you make there, you lose. And I think about the gains there because many of us are very concerned financially, right? That's part of what drives a lot of our anxiety, something around, financial, I won't even say abundance, but like financial gain or prestige or reputation, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to run past because I want people to see me a certain way or whatever, or I'm going to run through this because I want to get the money. I'm going to talk about this in terms of money, because what I often see is that you hit the wall and a few things happen. One, the money ends up being spent on all the recovery things that you need to do afterwards because you pushed yourself so hard that you wind up exhausted here. And so whether that is explicitly like medical bills or, all the massages and the things to help put your stressed out body back together, the spa days and the things like that, whereas like it's very different to go and visit a spa or have massages for the purpose of maintenance, or just because you maybe have an ongoing condition that those practices support, versus I have to go because I'm now falling apart because I made the decision to push past my capacity to a point where I did hit the wall. Or you get a getaway, so you end up spending money on traveling and vacations. Again, this is like recovery money. Just in that spread, a lot of the money starts to disappear. Retail therapy. You be like, well, I killed myself on that last project. I deserve it. I deserve it. Bay deserves it. The kids deserve it. Whoever it is that everybody wants to treat themselves, and you just treat yourself out of whatever that marginal gain was. A lot of times you end up giving it right back. You look back over the year and you're like, where did that money go? I made all this money, but wait, where did it go? I killed myself making all this money, but what had happened? Or you're just tired. You just have to start the cycle all over again, and you don't have the space to think strategically and critically to really direct your decisions. If we don't have some spaciousness that is regularly sort of built into the cadence of our work and our life, we end up making a lot of rash decisions and a lot of emotional decisions that could have been, is it the Navy SEALs, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We don't give ourselves space to experience that. I'm so bought into that little mantra. I say to myself oftentimes when I feel myself wanting to get spun up or wanting to do too much, I'm like, Monique, slow is smooth. And I do this like motion with my hand. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Bumpy's not fast. Smooth is fast. You don't have to run a million miles and do everything all the time. It gives you the illusion, the feeling. You get this like gratification. It's like I'm doing stuff. I'm crushing things. I'm doing things. But are you doing things in a directed manner? Are you doing things efficiently? We crave efficiency. We crave focus, but pushing past your capacity is one of the least efficient things that you can do. It is one of the most inefficient strategies that you can take with leveraging your time and your energy. Okay. So anyway, I just thought that like learning a little bit about, you know, pushing ourselves to failure and drawing that connection to how we manage ourselves against capacity and like what the purpose is and what it can cost us. Like I thought that was just such an interesting parallel to draw, and it really helped me understand myself a little bit better, because I think I just naturally, for whatever reason, and various things in my life that have taught me this over the years, but this is kind of like my baseline. I really don't overdo it. And I think that there's something to be said about the seasons of our life, the context, where maybe there are times when it's appropriate. I mean, certainly if you want to be an Olympic level athlete, like physically pushing yourself past all limits, seeing what failure looks like, that might be the path you need to take. Also, you recognize that there may be a cost on the other side of some of the other recovery practices and all the resources, the bajillions of dollars of resources that need to be put around a person in order to operate that way at that high of a level of intensity, of sustained intensity. Most of us don't have the resourcing and the team and the scientists and the research and like all of the things around us to support that kind of consistent high level output. We will just crash and fall. The team is not going to be there to put us back together and ice us up and hook us up to the machines and, pump us back up. And so just remembering that about ourselves, that, it's not, there's a whole system at work at all times. It's not about just the individual isolated and judging, yourself against any other individual. You have to take the full context and measure into place, and that it's best actually to focus on yourself. As you're developing a relationship with your own capacity. Do you know what it feels like when you hit that line of demarcation between like, okay, I have capacity. Nope, I really don't have capacity and I'm still going. Can you begin to pay attention to what that line feels like, and also understand what stories you're telling yourself as you begin to cross that line anyway, right? So developing that sensitivity, beginning to just give yourself a moment to breathe through and even look back in retrospect and see like, well, I can actually probably spot when I made the decision to take it too far. Now I've seen what that's costing me, right? Whether it is just feeling scattered all the time, whether it is your body's breaking down. I cannot tell you how many of the women that come to work with me who have diagnoses and things like that are happening. Their bodies are actually breaking down. They recognize they have to change. They have got to shift it up, because the things that we did in our 20s, the kind of, again, speaking about resourcing, youth is a resource, okay? Them 20-year-old joints, them 20-year-old organs, they're not the same as your 35, 40, 45, 50-year-old organs and so on, right? You're working with a different kind of toolkit. The resources are a little different back then. So your resilience also looks different. Your physical resilience looks a lot different. And your brain may have gotten bigger and stronger and, more effective and wise and all of that. But your body has not gained additional capacity, as we age. And so we have to respect that. So anyway, I feel like I'm saying all kinds of things right now. Leave a comment below if you know that, like, girl, this is me all day. And if this is like striking a chord for you, or you're having any revelations, I would love to hear this, because I'm still like, this is giving me my first clear glimpse, or at least one angle at looking at how capacity has actually worked in my life, and maybe why I have some internal tools and just a natural orientation around it. I'm still wanting to play with this concept a little bit more, just to continue to try to help other women recognize that this is available to them, and that we don't have to compromise, as I said, that feeling of consistency that we're craving, that stability that we're craving, that focus that we're craving, right? That smooth fast that we're craving, that it is available. But I want to continue talking about it in different ways that land for folks. And if you found things that have worked for you, please tell me below. I really, genuinely want to have a conversation about this. I genuinely want to learn more about what other people are experiencing and thinking about all this as well. All right, I'm going to stop here. I'll see y'all next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.